removing that shame. Does shame come from God or does it come from the
the
enemy of your soul,
Correct.
right? And so
Yes.
that's a big part of remembering, like, this is not God causing me to feel that shame.
Actually.
Right?
All shame
all
comes
shame.
from the enemy. Yeah.
Literally all of it.
That is not a tool in God's arsenal. That's
At
not in
all.
his toolbox
at all.
Yeah.
And so when you think about it that way, it's like, are you going to let the devil win?
Yeah.
Are you going to let him allow you to feel so much shame around something that honestly most of the time is not your fault?
Yeah. What's good, everybody? The weekend is here, and I'm excited to have you here with us at the Exhale with BOL. Now, you're probably looking around. You can say, man, the vibe looks a little different. That's a strange aesthetic they got going on. It's because it's a whole different show. And I'm excited for the launch of a new series of conversations entitled Soul Food. And what Soul Food is about is making sure that we're able to make some powerful deposits into the mental and emotional health of the body of Christ. Listen, we make strong spiritual deposits into your spiritual man and woman. But again, we want to be able to prosper in every area of life. And we want to experience what it actually means to be whole in Jesus Christ. And so we're praying that these conversations, that they feed you, that they nourish you, that they strengthen you, that they are in fact soul food, or that which strengthens the soul. And so we're excited tonight to have as our very, very first guest for our very, very first episode. Really, she is our resident life coach. She is no stranger to us. Go ahead in the chat and give some love to Miss Tyena Nixon, who is our guest this evening. Good to see you this evening.
Good to see you.
So for those who don't know, Tyena, she is a graduate of Oakwood University with a degree in biology. She also has a master's in public health from Emory University. She serves as a life coach. She's done a number of things, but she serves as a life coach, helping people in the area of time management, behavior modification, and developing strategies that allow them to experience true fulfillment and reaching their maximum capacity in Jesus Christ. Mm-hmm. So again, we thank you so much for giving your time to be here with us tonight.
Happy to be here.
So tonight, what we're going to be dealing with is something that that maybe it's familiar for some, maybe it's taboo for others. And we're going to be talking about the role of counseling in the life of even the believer. Now, I guess I want to throw something out there, and I think you agree with it, but I don't want to put words in your mouth. But I think sometimes some people hear the idea of counseling, getting in counseling, and in some people's mind, it represents me trying to put something as a substitute for my walk with God.
Yeah.
But I think what we're saying, we don't believe that it's a substitute for the life, but maybe a supplement.
Exactly.
Or just really recognizing that there is another dimension to humanity besides just spiritual wellness. Would you agree with that?
I would absolutely agree with that. And I believe that that would be God's will for us.
Okay.
Right? Simply because God believes, I think, God believes in science.
Okay.
I think God believes
God is the scientist.
He's the original, right?
Yeah.
Science is really just us catching up with God.
No, it's funny because I think there's a great author that says science is essentially putting in layman's terms the divine works of God.
Exactly.
It is just kind of putting in terms, things that we can't digest or comprehend.
Right. It's giving us language for it. It's giving us mechanisms to understand it and then to help it help us.
Yeah.
Right.
Sure.
And so I believe that God believes in that as the master physician. I think that that is something that God wants for us is to be well holistically all around, mental, physical, spiritual, all of it.
Yeah. So I just think sometimes what we do is we make competitors out of things that should be partners.
Exactly.
And I think, and I do get that there's a certain voice that says this in the place of spirituality, but that's not really where we are.
Exactly.
That's not what
That's
we're
not
on
our stance.
at all.
Yeah.
So I just think we don't need to make enemies out of things that if they complement one another, if they can be integrated,
Yes.
I think it assists us in experiencing the abundant life that Jesus Christ talked about in John 10 and verse 10.
Yeah.
So as we talk about the role of counseling, potentially in the life of the believer, do you feel like counseling should function more as vitamin or medicine?
That's a great question.
Okay.
So I think it should depend.
Okay.
I think it should depend on the person.
Gotcha. Okay.
And I think it should depend on the circumstance or the season.
Okay.
So vitamins, like I think we're all thinking about vitamins in the same way, sort of a supplementary thing that you take along with eating well and, all the other things that you're already doing in your life, hopefully to take care of yourself, to take care of your mental health, right? But then medicine oftentimes is to treat a particular thing, right? Like for the most part, you're not taking medicine as an overall general thing. You shouldn't be. You should take medicine as prescribed by your,
you don't just take Tylenol.
Correct. Just for kicks.
It.
It's like you have a headache, you have some particular pain point, and your medicine is treating that, right? And so if you think about it that way, sometimes there is one particular thing that is plaguing you, that is making your life difficult. Then you might use your counseling or therapy to treat that particular thing. Okay. Versus sometimes it's an overall, you're feeling generally dissatisfied with your life. You're feeling generally anxious with your life. In that case, you might do a little counseling for a season, for a time, in order to kind of help with that general issue.
Okay. So let me ask you this. All right. So what we tend to do is, kind of culture is always shifting. Language is always changing. And for some who may be a certain age, you may feel like the ground is always moving underneath your feet.
Yes.
So, I think there's some people that put all emotional or mental health exercises in one pot,
Yes.
But can you maybe break down the difference between maybe a therapist, a psychologist, and a psychiatrist?
Okay.
I think some people just kind of mix them all together and just kind of see it as one discipline or one service being provided. But maybe everybody doesn't need a psychiatrist or a psychologist, or maybe some do.
Right.
But how do I know what I need to be looking for?
Okay, so I'm gonna break it down into 3 different ones that I think have overlapping but also distinct functions. Okay. So let's talk about a therapist versus a licensed counselor versus a psychologist or psychiatrist. So let's start with the counselor. Okay. A counselor could be someone who is licensed to provide that sort of general, more broad stroke type of therapy. Okay. Counseling. So that could be a social worker, for example. There are people who specifically do things around marriage and family. They might not be a therapist, but they can counsel. And because it often runs in line with the work that they're doing. When we're thinking about a social worker doesn't just connect people to resources, but sometimes they are dealing with the day-to-day problems that a person might have in order to get them to where they need to be. Okay. So in that case, it's like, yes, this person might be having a hard time putting food on the table, but maybe it's because they have so much anxiety they lost their last job. So we need to talk about what is hampering you from doing the things that you need to do to operate well, in fullness in your life. And so it does make sense for someone like a social worker to provide some counseling to that person. And in that case, it's often short term. Not always, but often it's short term, and it's focused on providing tools, practices, strategies for a person. Okay. Now, when we talk about a therapist will often do some of those same things, and they might come from the same playbook. However, a therapist is licensed to go a little deeper. Okay. So they might have different frameworks that they're using, talk therapy versus, EM, just different types of therapy to kind of go a little bit deeper and help you understand the how and the why. So they still want to do that same kind of problem solving that a counselor will do, but they may want to help you get to the root of things. Why is that happening to you? And a lot of times your therapist will connect it back to something that maybe happened in your childhood or a traumatic event that you had. A counselor might not necessarily get into that deep work with you. And then you've got your psychologist or psychiatrist. They have a doctorate degree, right? And so even deeper than they would have gone to medical school and gotten an additional degree, which in my opinion makes them more credible in going even deeper, right? And treating some of these more complex issues that we have. So all of them have their role and have their, purpose. It just depends on how deep are we trying to go? And then are we trying to diagnose? Are we trying to medicate? Some of those more complex issues do require a diagnosis and medication.
Okay.
In that case, you want to go to a doctor.
Okay.
So a psychologist, psychiatrist, in the same way that your PCP might diagnose and medicate, your psychologist, psychiatrist can do the same.
All right. So
I know that was a lot. I hope that was helpful.
So let me just throw out maybe a few scenarios.
Okay.
Right? Okay. I know we didn't discuss this. But
yes.
I know
this
you
is
got
a
this,
surprise,
right?
but okay, let's go.
I'm feeling just anxious. I'm having trouble sleeping. Who should I go talk to?
I always say start with a therapist or counselor.
Okay. All right.
I say start with them. Because then if it's something that they can readily figure out for you, well, maybe you're just drinking coffee too late. You don't need to go to the doctor to necessarily tell you that.
Right.
They can talk to you about your lifestyle habits, right? And some of the things that you're doing, maybe easily point it out and start with that.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, I even want to take it a step back and say, have you talked to your actual primary care physician? Because often a primary care physician can solve that problem for you. If not, they might say, let's go talk to a therapist or let's go to, but start with
to a certain extent, so even your personal physician
absolutely
is a form of counseling.
Correct.
In that regard.
In that regard. And I think a lot of times people are worried about bringing up some of this stuff to their doctor because they feel like their doctor is specifically about medicine, right? But your doctor, especially a primary care physician, is they're kind of concerned about your overall wellness. And then they can give you advice about where to go depending on how the severity might be interpreted by them. Okay.
So I'm struggling relationally. Just all my relationships seem to sag, suffer, so on and so forth. Who am I reaching out to in that situation?
I would reach out to the therapist.
Okay.
I would reach out to the therapist because it sounds like you've got some patterns that you might be struggling with.
Okay.
And maybe they can help because you're saying multiple relationships now. Okay.
Yeah.
So then it's like, well, there might be some underlying issues. I would go to a therapist.
Okay. I'm just unmotivated. I'm lacking purpose, clarity. Is that more life coach? Which one is that?
I would say you could start with the life coach.
Okay. And you didn't define life coach. So give us the clarity on the life coach, that role and how it may differ.
Okay. So the way that I see a life coach, I think coach is the best word there to zone in on, right?
Yeah.
A coach is not someone who diagnoses you. They're not someone who provides any sort of super deep knowledge about yourself to you. However, they can point out some of your behaviors, right, that might be standing in your way. They can point out some mindsets that might be standing in your way. And in that way, the same way your basketball coach is going to give you some plays to run, right? They might tell you some exercises to put into play. A life coach can do the exact same thing. Give you some technique, some strategy.
So what about, I'm having, I don't know, urges, hearing things, maybe to hurt myself or others. Who am I reaching out to in that scenario? Maybe it's my child or someone that I know.
If you already had a therapist in place, I would talk to a therapist who would likely then refer you to a psychologist or a psychiatrist because to me it sounds like you're probably dealing with a more complex issue that likely requires a diagnosis, maybe medication, but it's not always medication. Sometimes they just have knowledge of some practices, strategies, techniques. And the thing to know about your psychologist is that they're going to be doing this based on certain theories and frameworks. It's not just them thinking up something, right? It's not just something they read online. They have done a lot of study and they're able to kind of pinpoint certain things that might be going on with you that speak to, okay, those symptoms, the more that we talk about this, those symptoms kind of line up with something that I am aware of. And then they can look at certain frameworks and theories to help with a treatment plan for that thing.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, what do you think is, what are some of the primary reasons people get anxious about sitting down, sharing, disclosing, talking to somebody? Even when people come to see me, there are times where I can sense an apprehension. Maybe a fear of judgment.
I was gonna say, I think judgment,
pensiveness. And sometimes it's, as a pastor, I'm not a stranger to the congregation.
Yes.
But what do you feel like are some of those reasons that kind of make people say, all right, I'll do it, but tomorrow, later, or just
put it off.
General anxiety about going to counseling.
I think there's the stigma around getting help in general.
Okay.
So you'll see there are people who have been suffering in pain for years and never went to the doctor about it. Okay. Yeah. So they just have a general sense of anxiety around getting help. Huh? I think it's a human nature thing, right? Wow. But then you pack on the stigma that we have around mental health issues. Yeah. Still, even in this year, we are still struggling with that. So some of that stigma makes it so that people don't want people to think that they're crazy. They don't want anyone to think that they are worse off than others, right? All of us, I think, have this desire to seem normal, to seem same as everyone else. Nothing is particularly different about me unless it's something that puts me in a good light, that makes me look better than others, but not any worse or any different than others, right? And I think you probably see that as a pastor. People don't want their pastor to know like their deepest, darkest, you know, and so I think it's important for us to destigmatize. I'm so glad that we're having this conversation and that soul food is getting into these topics that for years have been stigmatized. And unfortunately, in religious circles, there's another layer of stigma that says, and even way back in the Bible days, people assume if something was wrong with you, it's because you've sinned or your parents have sinned, as opposed to it just being the fallen nature of mankind in that we are imperfect and we have imperfect bodies, imperfect minds, you know, all of those things. And until we have been made new when Jesus returns, there's always going to be something wrong with you, with all of us. And so I think in having these conversations, hopefully we can destigmatize some of these things and say there's nothing wrong with getting help.
Man, it's so funny because even when you kind of talk about that unwillingness to get help, but I just think a part of man's innate nature is not just to sin, but it is to cover or pretend.
Exactly.
So like, you know, Adam and Eve, kind of the original, you know, couple, once they ate the fruit, their response was not to go and say, God, we need help.
Exactly.
It was to create an artificial covering to kind of hide or shield nakedness, flaw, so on, or shame, whatever it is. And I just think that's really at the core of it all.
Shame.
And you know, I don't know, is that, I don't know, because I don't know that culture is going to shift that radically in the next 5-10 years, you know, to where there's no stigma.
Right.
What, you know, how does a person work through that apprehension and just kind of say, you know what, I need help, or I am going to, regardless of what people may think or say, and not saying that you need to disclose your moves in that regard. But saying, all right, you know, this is something I'm going to do for me, for my wellness.
So I think really it comes down to cost-benefit analysis, right? Think about what is it costing you to keep this stuff a secret. You know, when you have secrets, when you have issues that you're dealing with on your own, it is weighing on you. It's weighing on your mind. You're likely not eating or sleeping well the way that you should, or you're eating more than you should, trying to self-medicate. You might not realize that's what you're doing. But think about how much better off you could be, how you could increase your quality of life. If you're a parent, how you could increase the quality of life of your children, you know, because other people around you are also affected by the things that you are sort of hiding and keeping secret that you're trying to deal with on your own. You think that it's secret, but there are ways that it's showing up in other areas of your life, and it is affecting the people who care about you and love you, you know. And moreover, I think as a Christian, you should think about what God would want for you. Does God want you cowering and hiding and, you know, feeling ashamed about something that is just purely human? Or does he want you to live well? Does he want you to live abundantly? Jesus said he came so that you could have life and have it more abundantly. And I think part of that is removing that shame. Does shame come from God, or does it come from the enemy of your soul? Right? And so that's a big part of remembering, like, this is not God causing me to feel that shame.
Actually. All shame comes from the enemy.
Literally all of it.
That is not a tool in God's arsenal. That's not in his toolbox at all.
And so when you think about it that way, it's like, are you going to let the devil win? Are you going to let him allow you to feel so much shame around something that honestly, most of the time is not your fault.
Yeah.
It is not your fault if your brain works a different way, if the chemicals in your body are a little bit imbalanced, or if there were things that happened to you in your childhood or, during your life that is affecting you now. That's not on you, and the devil would love for you to stay buried under the shame of your past or of the issues that you might have, instead of getting it sorted through, working through it with a professional who can help you overcome.
Wow. Because one of the things as I'm listening to you talk, when you talk about letting the devil win, I think a part of that is that maybe some of us are suffering with certain things that we assume are just the result of our behavior or our deeds.
Exactly.
Or maybe, there are things that can actually be remedied or helped that you just assume this is just a part of the journey.
Correct.
Or a part of the path.
Yeah.
It's funny because it's apples and oranges, but I have a plantar in this right foot. And it's funny, you deal with it for a while, you build up a tolerance to it. And after a while, I was like, you know what? I don't really have to live like this. I can probably see my, and there's some things that really simple modifications that maybe realize, I actually
I don't have to live like this.
Live like this. I don't have to carry this much pain.
Yes.
There is something that can correct it.
I literally was just talking to my brother and sister-in-law, my husband, this past weekend. I had pregnancy-induced plantar fasciitis. And I mean, it was terrible. Yeah. It was terrible. And like you said, I don't know why that is, that we will just put up with pain for a while, just try to keep pushing. And so eventually I mentioned it to my primary care physician, and she was like, you know what? You need to go down to this store. They will measure your feet. They will, have you stand up. Have you look at it. I got some insoles. She had me get some new shoes, and I was good with it. And then a doctor gave me some tips on kind of how to stretch. And what to do. Use that tennis ball, run my feet on it. Good as new. It's been 6 years. I haven't dealt with it again.
Right.
But imagine if I never said anything.
But the amount of time that I just went, just pain.
Yes, just dealing with pain.
And or even just like right before I walk out onto the platform to preach, I'm limping.
Yeah.
But then I'll put on the best strut I could. You know what I'm saying? Just because I know people.
And don't we all do that? Whether it's mental health issues or whatever, it's like I'm just gonna put on like I'm good, and hope that nobody notices.
Hope that nobody notices.
Counselor, coach, therapist, psychologist. There's so many different terms here. I hope that you are paying special attention. Mental health is nothing to laugh about. It is a very serious conversation, and we are excited to be able to hold space for people to gain the tools they need to be able to select a counselor that's going to work for them. This is such a critical episode here we're having for Soul Food, and we want to make sure that you join us again next week as we touch yet even another heavy conversation on suicide, specifically in the Black community. And so let's get back to our conversation on the role of a counselor. Make sure you tag a friend and share the link with someone so that we can all be benefited from the nuggets of wisdom that are going to be shared here.
Man, I'm praying that there's somebody that's really hearing this and digesting this and realizing that there is hope, that there is a more excellent way.
And can I say something about this idea of there are things that we just think we have to deal with, right? And I think it's Paul that talks about the thorn in his side. So this is very vulnerable for me to put this out here, but I believe in, we overcome by the blood of the Lamb and the word of our testimony. Part of my testimony is that I have dealt with depression since I was 17 years old. And for a long time, I didn't know what it was. I didn't know what caused it. And I thought it was just, well, I'm lazy. I procrastinate. I don't like to do work or whatever. In reality, I was dealing with a lot of anxiety and depression. And it took me years to finally talk to a therapist about it, to talk to a counselor when I was in graduate school to kind of help me figure that out. And what I have learned and kind of come to terms with is I may never be fully free of that. That might just be the thorn in my side that for whatever reason the Lord has allowed me to kind of have to deal with. However, God did not say that I had to die under that, right? That my life can't be a good life, that I can't have a good quality of life due to that. So I think it's just really important. If there are people out there who it's been years, decades that you've been dealing with something, it might not be that it's going to be completely taken away. Some of us have diagnoses that are just it is what it is.
It is
you know,
what it is, yeah.
some of them ADHD,
Yeah.
you know, OCD, those things you can't necessarily cure them. However, you can get help so that you're able to increase your quality of life with them. When they come up, when you start feeling a certain kind of way. For me, I learned I during the winter months, I deal with seasonal affective disorder.
Okay.
And so you see how the sun is starting to set sooner and stuff like that. I have to be aware of that. And I pick up on, okay, I'm feeling a little down. I'm feeling a little blue. I have something called a happy light. I literally use it in the mornings. And what the sun would have normally done for me, my happy light, I have to put it directly on my face. And I just sit there and I promise you I feel a difference. Something that simple, right? But if I had never talked to anybody about it, if I had never brought it up, I would just be struggling to get out of bed every day of, you know, certain seasons of my life for the rest of my life.
Wow.
You don't have to live that way. So yeah, maybe there is a thorn in your side and you're not going to necessarily be rid of the thorn, but you can certainly have some medication, vitamin, you know, whatever to help you deal with that.
Yeah, I mean, I guess, and part of removing the stigma is just the acknowledgement. You know, it's so funny. I read something, this was a long time ago, and it talks about how we tend to make a distinction between a functional family and a dysfunctional family, when really the whole root of it is like all families are dysfunctional. And it's just kind of really a matter of how much dysfunction,
that's right,
you know what I'm saying, that has been operating. It's funny because you won't even realize sometimes how much dysfunction is in your family, maybe until you get married, or go to college, or just really get outside of that space, and realize, man, how much you've been dealing with, how much trauma you have been living with, or you just acclimated to, so on and so forth. And so I just think there is just a constant journey of discovery. I guess that we got to be willing to take.
All of us in some way, shape, or form in our family systems and our personal systems have some level of dysfunction.
All of us,
it's just a matter of who is addressing it. Some families are, you know, just sweeping it under the rug and they're not doing anything about it. And that dysfunction will continue to weigh down your family versus actually addressing it, especially from the top. The parents are addressing it, then they're going to ensure that their kids are addressing it. Nothing has made me happier than a friend of mine reaching out to me and saying, hey, I heard you talk about therapy. Does your therapist see children? I want my preteen to be seen. And my heart soared for her and for her child, because I was like, she is not only not allowing that stigma to be a problem for their family, but seeking out help for her child. You know, and we don't have to live like that, y'all.
Don't have to live that way. So, you know, maybe there's somebody who's, you know, listening to this and saying, okay, you know, I think I want to get help. I want to pursue wholeness. I believe that under God's guidance, I can get better and have a higher quality of life. You know, I mean, I don't know. How do you go looking for a counselor? I mean, do you go to do you Google?
Right.
Do you go to Yellow Pages? I'm dating myself when I say that.
The Yellow Pages.
Do you just seek a referral from a friend? Like, what's, I guess, the healthiest, most intelligent way to
go about
begin that
doing
search?
it. So I personally start with insurance.
Okay.
If you've got insurance, your insurance company usually has a directory.
Okay.
And you can go and see what falls, who is in your network, basically. Because if we don't got to pay for it, don't pay for it now.
Agreed.
We want to get the help, but we don't have to, you know, bleed our pockets in order to do so. So that's where I start. I have coaching clients who come to me and they have issues that are outside of my scope. And I'll say to them, you know what, I think what you need is a therapist. And they'll say, you know, I've been meaning to get one. It's been years. You know, we talked about that. I've been meaning to get one. I haven't done it. I'll say, you know what, as part of our work together, I'm going to help you find a therapist. And we have literally gotten on Zoom, share your screen. Let's go to the website for, you know, whoever you got, Blue Cross or, you know, whatever. And we're going to scroll through and find it. And a lot of times you can find reviews for people so you can see, is that a good fit for me? It kind of doesn't sound like they work with, you know, people like me or whatever the case is. And then you go ahead and try it. And I want to put the disclaimer out there. Sometimes you got to do a little trial and error, okay? It's just like any other relationship. You got to see, do our personalities work well together? Do their frameworks and the theories that they operate, do they speak to me? Do I need a woman versus a man? Do I need a person who shares my race versus someone who doesn't? So you kind of don't get too enmeshed immediately with that person that you feel like if it's not working for me, I'm done.
So it's not one size fits all.
I don't think so at all. At all.
So even the most accomplished therapist may not be a match for you. Or
exactly. And vice versa. So I think the first thing to start with is let's look through some kind of directory. You can Google. If you have a friend that you know has been doing therapy and you feel comfortable asking them for the the name of their person, their contact information, do that. But unless y'all have the same insurance, that might not work for you.
May not work.
So just being very practical with you guys, go to that directory, look through it, see who works for you, look them up. Psychology Today, if they're a psychologist or therapist, usually has a profile for people, and you can read who do they usually work with and things like that.
Now, I'm just kind of big on, interactions. I can see who that person is on paper, but kind of like pastors or doctors, or everybody's the same on paper. You got the same qualifications.
Yeah. So
as I'm sitting in front of my counselor and trying to get a feel for if this is the person, the right one. So I believe in a real estate agent. I before I sign on the dotted line, I got some questions I'm going to ask you.
Yeah.
Is there are there some particular things that you should ask someone that you're considering engaging with counseling on?
So
you need to know their philosophy about this
certain things
or that. Or
that's a good question. I think it depends. I think it depends. So, for example, that I had that conversation recently with someone, and I wanted to know, do you prescribe medication for this particular thing? There are certain types of medication that some doctors are more comfortable or less comfortable prescribing. And so that was one of my first questions, because I knew I required medication for the particular thing that I was seeing that provider for. So if you already have that knowledge, I think that's a good question. Do you prescribe stimulant medication, or do you prescribe, you can ask some of those questions if you're knowledgeable. You can also ask about religion or if they're faith-based, because some people would like for their doctor or their provider to have a spiritual background or be comfortable discussing faith-based strategies with them. So, for example, I wanted that. And when I met with my therapist,
I guess, I don't espouse any particular counselor, but I do think that's something that should be a part of, for those of us who do believe.
Right.
I think that's probably something that would provide a greater deal of comfort.
Correct.
And a connectivity in that process.
Definitely. And I think also, if you know that, so I knew with something like depression, right? I know that while that depression might not necessarily always have a spiritual basis, there are reasons why I might be dealing with that depression. But I do believe that the enemy can use that to get to me, right? I know that sometimes I struggle with opening the word or praying when I'm feeling certain things. And so I want to be able to vocalize that to my therapist, and then my therapist be able to give me actual strategies. So my therapist was super helpful to me. I asked her up front, are you faith-based? And she was like, yes, I am. We don't share the same religion, she and I. However, the things that would come into play,
there's some overlap.
That's right. There is some overlap. And so she'll say to me, remember, you can write your prayer just as much as you can say it. If you're having a hard time, let's pull out your journal and let's write it down. So she gives me very practical steps on how to incorporate my faith in my treatment plan. So that might be worth asking about up front if that matters to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
So let me ask you this. So, because you kind of touched on what I'm about to ask already. Because you're saying everybody is not a match for every person.
Correct.
But I'm kind of thinking about the person who's saying, well, you know what, man, I tried this counseling thing and I just didn't get anything out of it. It didn't work. It didn't benefit me anything. How does a person know, okay, this is not a good match and I need to pivot?
Yes.
Or, okay, maybe I'm just not being open enough.
Right.
Or maybe I'm not putting into practice
when
I leave what has been shared. This happens to me all the time. I'm just kind of like, whoa.
I was going to say, is there a pattern?
Yeah, because it's kind of like, people will say, well, Pastor, I just feel like this is, this marital counseling again working, but I gave you several assignments and you didn't do any of them. So I'm kind of like, why are you here?
I have had a coaching, but I've had coaching clients like that as a coach. And I'm like, hey, it's week 3.
Yeah.
I gave you 3 different assignments.
Yeah, you didn't
do none of them. So at this point, what are we doing and why are we doing it? Yeah. Okay, so that's a you problem.
Yeah. So how's that person know? Just maybe if there's some some clues to say, all right, stick it in.
Yeah.
Maybe commit to it.
Yeah.
Or all right, this is how I know it's actually time to try something else. Yeah.
Okay. So that's a great question. So I would say sometimes it's just a personality thing. And that I think can be pretty obvious pretty quickly.
Okay.
Some people, just the way that they speak, their temperament might not work for you.
Yeah.
Right. I once
People
had
who are too direct.
They're too direct.
Yeah.
Maybe they're a little dry. They
Yeah.
don't have. I need a sense of humor in my therapist and my
really?
counselors.
Yeah.
Right. So I look for that kind of upfront, because sometimes I'm saying something and it's a joke, and I don't want you to try to commit me to the loony bin because I made a joke.
Yeah.
So like,
Gotcha.
I need you to be able to read my sense of humor. Okay. So I look for a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And then for other people, they need someone who's very nurturing, perhaps.
Gotcha.
So my therapist prior to the one that I have now, older woman, very nurturing, very kind. And for a season, she worked for me.
Okay.
And then I realized, you know what? She's kind of coddling me now. I actually need someone who's going to be a little more direct with me.
Wow. Okay.
So I switched to a Black female therapist, and she don't play with me.
Yeah,
And that's
okay.
sometimes I need that. Sometimes I need like some big sister, like, now listen, you didn't do what I asked you to do. Let's try it again next week, and we'll come back. And she holds me accountable to a degree that my previous therapist wasn't necessarily comfortable doing.
Yeah.
So it might be a personality thing.
Okay.
Versus, and this might be harder to tell, if someone is asking you to do things that are not necessarily ethical, that don't necessarily line up with what we would expect a level of professionalism to be.
Yeah.
Maybe that's just not a good fit.
Yeah.
Because let's be clear, all doctors, all providers, all therapists are not created equal in that they don't all adhere to the same code of ethics and the code of conduct. And so you do have to exercise some discernment.
People are people.
People are people at the end of the day,
In
regardless
every
of their
phase,
profession.
every walk of life. Yeah.
So you do have to exercise some discernment in that sense. But I always say, don't be scared to just, hey, thank you for the time that we've worked together. I am going to put a pause on our services. And if I want to continue, I will get back to you.
Yeah, and you don't have to burn down the bridge on the way out.
That's right.
Because you may have to walk
You may
back
have to come
across
back, and that's
at some
fine.
point in time.
But it's you have to be willing to take some agency and say, this is my journey, and I would like to try something different. And you don't even have to tell them you're going to anybody different necessarily. You could just tell them, or if you feel comfortable, I think that this kind of our relationship has run its course. I appreciate everything that you've done for me. I'm going to go ahead and try something else.
Okay.
And if they're any level of professional, they're going to be happy for you that you're able to speak up for yourself, advocate for yourself, and make those choices.
Man, this has been very, very rich, very helpful, practical. I learned a lot just sitting here listening to you. Can you maybe just share a word of encouragement, admonition to the person who is like, man, they're, something is stirring inside of them.
Yes.
They're sensing a call to action. Can you just maybe just give a final admonishment and just let them know it's okay, and maybe give them a first step?
Right. So I would say that this might feel overwhelming for you. And so it's okay to just start small. Speaking to your primary care physician, if you have a doctor that you go to who talks to you about your blood pressure, they talk to you about all these different things, they also went to school and to some degree had some conversations around mental health. They had some conversations around anxiety, depression, whatever the case is. And so don't feel afraid to mention it at your next doctor's visit, or even set up a sick visit and say, I'm having some thoughts, or I am struggling in this area of my life. Can you help me? I think it's as simple as that. If you don't even want to do that, talk to the person closest to you. Even a pastor can be helpful to just sort of, because a lot of times we know what we need to do. We just need some help to get there. We need a little accountability. A life coach can help with that accountability. A life coach can help with just taking some of those steps and saying, all right, what are some things I can put into practice in my everyday life that can help ameliorate the situation? And then once I get to that level, then I'll be in a better headspace to maybe call the doctor. I'll be in a better headspace to go and look for the therapist. So don't feel like you have to jump in feet first. Take one small step in the right direction. Pray about it. All of the other things that we pray about for help, God is just as willing to help you get your mental health in order. God wants that for you. He wants you to live well. He wants you to be whole. And so a part of that is addressing the things that we have going on up here and here. That is part of your wellness journey. And so even if it's just a small step, start with something today. And I always, with my clients, I say, what are we going to do today, right now? Because if we put it off till tomorrow, likely it won't happen. It won't happen. So if it's as small as just opening the tab on your computer and looking up your insurance directory, you don't have to do anything else. Just do that. Tomorrow, we'll actually look through the directory.
There you go.
Just one small step.
Great stuff, man. I love it. And I just love just the reminder that God will help us even with our mental health.
Yes.
It's not like that's off limits. Not like that's on us.
That's right.
He is the old folk would say he's a heart fixer.
That's right.
And a
mind regulator.
That's what they would say.
I know him to be a mind regulator.
So either we believe it or we don't.
That's right.
Man, thank you so much for what you shared with us tonight.
Yeah.
Tyena, if somebody, again, you are practicing life coach as well.
Mm-hmm.
If somebody wanted to connect with you,
Yeah.
get a little clarity, direction, counsel, or just, they want to partner with somebody,
Mm-hmm.
how can they find you?
They can find me on social media if they'd like. Tyena Nixon on Facebook, the Tyena Nixon on Instagram. And you can always email me at hello@TyenaNixon.com.
All right. Listen, this has been great. And we thank you all so much for allowing us to come into your living rooms or to your device this Friday evening. And we are very, very excited for the launch of Soul Food, again, which was simply a space design where we could just pour something into you that would nourish your inner man or your inner woman and help you get to the place where you're experiencing not just wellness financially or prosperity romantically, but we want you to prosper in your inner person and be nourished by some of this soul food. And so I was blessed. I pray that you were blessed by it as well. So if you don't mind, be a digital disciple, be an Apple apostle, even if you can be an electronic evangelist or you're under the Android anointing, you can still help. Copy this link, send it to 4 or 5 people that they might be blessed in this dialogue as well. And we pray that you have, a fruitful, prosperous, blessed weekend. And we look forward to seeing you right here next week for another episode of Soul Food.
You've been armed with information right now. You've been given some insight and perspectives on how to select and the role of a counselor in your life, in your success matrix, and we're excited about that. We're excited about this new series and this new show that we have here on The Weekend Exhale with BOL. But for those that don't know, The Weekend Exhale with BOL is a family of shows. There are multiple different topics that are covered with the different shows that we have. This month, we're looking at the topic Soul Food, which is all about mental health. But we have others as well, Covenant 28 and Girls Night In and Point of View, King's Table. There's several other shows. And this is a great time to just say, go ahead and hit that subscribe button. Make sure you ring the notification bell so that you're notified every time we have new content or when we go live, which we do go live fourth Friday night of each month on a show called What Just Happened. So that's definitely where we want to make sure you are informed. But lastly, for those that want to support, you're saying to yourself, man, this is a conversation that has blessed me immensely. I want to be able to ensure that these kinds of conversations continue to happen. Head on over to breathoflife.tv right now and look for that donate button. And whatever amount you can give, listen, we covenant, we're going to pour it right back into the ministry so that souls can be saved, hearts can be reached, and Jesus himself can come back to receive us in peace. These things we ask. We're so excited that you are here with us for The Weekend Excel with BOL, and we'll see you next week.